maintenance center gives the Marine Corps the most responsive capability to the fleet of anything that we have. It's also the center, the actual core of the regeneration and reconstitution requirements for the Marine Corps. That's how we get ready to fight after a major fight. Theory of constraints gave us an opportunity, a structure, if you will, to maximize the potential of the employees. We had the potential there all the time. We just perhaps didn't have the right structure to reach out and find it.
Idea fundamental to theory of constraints is every organization is a system. And that as a system, there's going to be a weak link or a bottleneck. And theory of constraints walks you through the process of finding your constraint, getting the most out of it, subordinating everything else in your organization to that constraint, elevating that constraint, say getting more of whatever that bottleneck is, and then finally going back to square one and finding your new constraint. And it's a process of continuing improvement.
Before we implemented the theory of constraints, we was behind schedule, and there was being a bigger and bigger backlog of what we was not producing.
Yeah, prior to theory of constraints, we were probably missing our schedule 50% of the time, and going out and working on our customers' equipment and asking for plus-ups after we got started the work was a big problem. It was almost a normal way of doing business around here.
One major example is on our MK-48 program, which is a power unit for the logistics vehicle system.
It's a heavy hauler for the Marine Corps, and we were having problems meeting the customer's requirement for cost and schedule.
We were actually only producing 5 MK-48s per month when we had a requirement to produce 10 per month.
So we had cost overruns on just about every vehicle we produced. Our customer was basically dissatisfied with our performance.
Once the workforce had embraced this theory of constraints, our performance went from not acceptable to be that close to something that's just outstanding. The workforce has taken this just to a new level we've never seen before.
Well, since the implementation of theory of constraints, we have not had to go out and ask our customers for any additional money other than what we asked for originally.
We implemented the theory of constraints on the MK-48 line, and we went from producing 5 vehicles per month to a high as many as 23 in 1 month. And we actually got ahead of schedule. So far ahead of schedule that our customer gave us 30 additional vehicles to work last year.
And we've been able to meet their schedule 100% of the time. Or in a lot of cases, we've completed their vehicles early.
Since we've implemented this theory of constraints, since the workforce has embraced it so wholeheartedly, the results have proven to be just absolutely spectacular.
The theory of constraints has improved my work, made it a lot smoother, and we're able to produce a lot more.
Since I've started working here, I think our work has gone a lot quicker, and our parts are closer by, and they show up on time, and everything's come to us with better quality.
To all of those employees that are so dedicated, it has been on their back that this success has been carried. They implemented the theory of constraints. They are the ones who have increased the safety record. They're the ones who have increased production. They're the ones who have ensured the quality for the riflemen in the field. It's just a wholehearted thank you to all of those employees that are so dedicated.
We have, as a result of implementing theory of constraints and lean thinking, we've now been giving them all 3 of the major things they want. They want a quality product, they want it within their cost that they estimated and negotiated with us, and they want it on schedule.
Matter of fact, we've even gotten ahead of schedule. And we've also reduced our prices on every vehicle we've produced for them and produced additional vehicles with no additional cost to the customers.
We probably took our most dissatisfied customer and probably made him our best marketer. He was well pleased with the turnaround that we did on his program, and from that point he went back and started telling other program managers how well we had done, and they need to give us a second look. The maintenance center has improved so much with our implementation of theory of constraints and lean thinking that we're able now to compete with private industry. And we not only can compete with private industry, but we make very good partners with private industry. In the future, it's more of a public-private partnerships, and we've been talking with several commercial entities, and we're primed now, and they have come in and taken a look at what we've done, and they're very interested in partnering with us for future workload.
The maintenance centers have combined ISO 9000 registration with lean manufacturing, with theory constraints, critical chain project management, with drum buffer road. And they've done it in such a way that it makes sense, all using an MRP2 production management system. Making all those pieces fit together, now that's nothing short of brilliant.
We had a very successful 2002. I'm sure we're going to have a successful 2003, but we're looking out to 2010, 2015. If we continue to do the things we're doing, the Marine Corps' depots and the ones in DOD will be around for a long time.
To the employees in the Maintenance Center who have carried the load of this success, I would give them a most hearty well done and a thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. What an awesome video. I'll tell you, I'm the luckiest Marine in this great country of ours, and that's a fact. I have the distinct privilege, the distinct honor, in fact, to command the almost 1,800 Marines and civilian Marines at Maintenance Center Albany. And I was given that privilege a year and a half ago, in June of 2007. I'll tell you, I hit the ground there in Albany, Georgia, and I haven't slowed down since. It's an absolutely phenomenal place. I was going to say to work, but I'll tell you, it's not work. It's not work when you enjoy doing what you do. It's not work when it's so easy to be enthusiastic and motivated at what you do every day, because that enthusiasm, that motivation is contagious, and it's so easy to pick up from the very people that Mr. Burt Black represents. The 1,750 plus civilian Marines that are making it happen every single day at Maintenance Center Albany. Every single day, these headlines throughout the world and in our news media on what is going on in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other places of challenge throughout our world. It's a direct result of the people that Burt represents. That Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, and civilian Marines are coming home. And that's not an overstatement at all. That is a fact. What I've got up there for you right now is just a little brief agenda of what we're going to talk about this morning. Before I get to that point, however, I just need to clarify a couple points that were made a few moments ago. First off, Gary mentioned earlier talking about Delta and talking about the Marines in the audience. Well, there's several other Marines in the audience. They're just incognito. They're in civilian attire right now. You may be sitting next to one. You don't even know it. So if you take one thing away from this talk today, out of the example of sustaining excellence, sustaining production excellence, understand that it really is about the people that I'm privileged to work with every day in this facility that you see up there. In the top of that picture, you see our 1 mile oval test track where we test all of our ground vehicles, our tracked and wheeled vehicles, prior to selling them back to the Fleet Marine Force. In the lower right, you see almost a 4 million gallon test pond, a float pond, where we take our amphibious assault vehicles, our light armored vehicles, and test them following maintenance to make sure that they're going to do the job that they are supposed to do when they get out into the fleet. And then the big facility, kind of down in the lower left part, that's where I live. That's where I work. That's where I have fun. That's why I have the privilege to get out and lead. To get out and lead by being with the very people that Burt represents. Learning about the people, learning what their wants are, serving those people that I'm privileged to lead. Maintenance Center Albany belongs to Marine Corps Logistics Command, commanded by Major General Willie Williams. The three primary bullets that I'd like you to take away from this part here, just to give you a sense of what Marine Corps Logistics Command represents, are noted in red. The operational logistics solution provider for the Marine Corps. Everywhere there is a Marine today, there is some aspect of Marine Corps Logistics Command supporting that Marine, that chaplain, that doctor, that Navy corpsman. Everywhere, there's a focus on that warfighter, that Marine that's currently driving those vehicles that our civilian Marines have their fingerprints on, their sweat, their handprints, and that's not lost on them, let me assure you. Everywhere, Marine Corps Logistics Command focus is making sure that that warfighter is equipped with the integrated solutions to do their job. And finally, Marine Corps Logistics Command is here to enhance the Marine Corps' ability to execute at the direction of the President of the United States any mission we're called to do. It really is all about the people. These are the people that I'm talking about. These are the people that get it done every single day. And you know, as long as I talk, as long as I live and breathe, I'm going to talk about the privilege of leading, not just Marines, but civilian Marines. You only see a handful of uniforms in that picture. What you see in the people there, they're wearing jeans, coveralls, polo shirts, khakis, paint suits, you name it. They're the ones that are making it happen every day. Now let me talk about some of the statistics in that chart. We currently have, and actually this chart is somewhat dated because we had to get the brief into the TOC conference a while back. Currently on board in our command, we have 1,790 civilian Marines and Marines. There's only 10 Marines in that group. The rest are all, as you see there, broken down between contractors. We're partnered with DS2, a subsidiary of Lockheed Martin, providing contractor support, and then temporary term and both permanent civilian Marines. Now on the right-hand side, you see our growth in personnel. Our growth since the 2001 time frame, back when Colonel Steve Foreman had the privilege of command. 774 personnel, now we're sitting topping 1,790 people. With that comes challenges. And we're going to talk to some of those challenges, not just with the sustainment of theory of constraints, but facilities. My gosh, that command, those facilities I showed you the picture of a few moments ago, they weren't made to sustain 1,790 people. Head facilities, restrooms. I mean, just let's talk basic, very basics of human needs. Those are things that take up a fairly large portion of, if not my day, you know, the day of our facilities engineers, our facilities managers, things like that. And I could go on about that, but there's unintended consequences with growth. There's also huge personal satisfaction in what we're accomplishing with that increase in personnel. I can promise you this, we would not have been able to increase to such significant extent without a recognition in industry, a recognition in the Department of Defense that we, Maintenance Center Albany, was providing value to the warfighter, providing a product on time, within cost, and high quality. I can promise you that. A little background on our command. We're very versatile, and capable. 400 different lines of principal items that are overhauled at any given time in our command. We're not only serving the needs of the Marine Corps, we've got other non-traditional customers in terms of the National Guard Bureau, private industry. We're partnered with DRS Corporation to support the U.S. Air Force in their tonner baggage handler. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, the hostage rescue vehicles. That looks like a light armored vehicle in the lower left-hand corner of that picture. It's not your traditional light armored vehicle, I assure you. In the lower right, the U.S. Navy Seabees, our construction battalions. The Humvees that they use come to Maintenance Center Albany for overhaul. The Air Force, the Track 170 communication suite, both for the Marine Corps and the U.S. Air Force, as well as the Marine Corps equipment that you see pictured above, the MK-48 logistics vehicle system and the amphibious assault vehicle. The Foreign Military Assistance, the U.S. Army, Homeland Security, all non-traditional customers that we're not going out to market ourselves. They are coming to us. They are coming to us to ask us to get it done for them. All of that started to turn around for those people to come to us back when these three gentlemen that are seated right here were actually working and trying to make a difference and trying to recognize that there was a need for change to make things happen. With that, and no surprise really, the increase in revenue. Now the chart, again, somewhat dated, that $331 million for fiscal year 08. We actually topped out at $352 million at the end of the fiscal year. All right, a lot of result due to the war effort, a lot of result of these non-traditional customers, a lot of the result due directly to unanticipated, expedited requirements for the fleet. When a Marine Expeditionary Unit is floating and that Marine Expeditionary Force commander at Camp Lejeune or Camp Pendleton calls and puts his finger in my chest and says, I need 30 Humvees to be able to be overhauled, armored, and ready to be loaded on a ship in 2 weeks, that's a pretty simple equation. Colonel, Lieutenant General. I say, yes, sir, and we make it happen. That's a fact. But I'm going to turn this over to Lieutenant Colonel Don Humpert in just one moment. But let me tell you just one piece of information that I think is unique to Maintenance Center Albany. Colonel Steve Foreman spent his entire career in the Marine Corps, with the exception of his time at Marine Corps Logistics Command and Maintenance Center Albany, as an aircraft maintenance officer. Prior to June of 2007, I spent my entire career, 30 years in the Marine Corps at the time, fixing helicopters and jets as an aircraft maintenance officer. None of those pieces of equipment you see pictured there fly. None of that flies. We're working on it. It doesn't fly intentionally anyway. Well, I will tell you, the Marine Corps has made a conscious decision over the last several years to put people that have an experience with depot-level maintenance, experience with quality, and I will tell you, and you're going to hear this theme throughout this talk, I will tell you, experience with leading by serving the needs of those you lead. Getting to know the people, getting to know what their needs are, getting them to believe that they can do things that they never thought possible. And it's all about getting close to them and knowing them. And that's what you're going to hear as a theme through this presentation today. And one more unique point, and I'll turn this over to Don Humpert. I had the distinct privilege of implementing airspeed into Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron 11. I was the commanding officer back in 2004 when we implemented the Naval Aviation's approach to an integrated solution to provide continuous process improvement tools in the squadrons. Theory of constraints, lean thinking, Six Sigma, all roped into one. At the time, I'm thinking, well, this is going to be challenging. This is a lot to implement at one time. Fast forward to 2007, and I check into Maintenance Center Albany and find out that they have been using the theory of constraints since 2001. And they had some elements of lean thinking, the 6S or 5S, you know, the housekeeping aspect of lean. And they were good at it. We are only now, today, my contribution with Maintenance Center Albany has been to aggressively pursue integrating. And a discussion I had with Ellie Goldrat yesterday, it is integrated, lean thinking, and theory of constraints. It's a natural marriage of those tools that we have at our disposal. And so, in fact, I've got the majority of my managers this week going through Greenbelt training at Maintenance Center Albany. So that's kind of where we're at currently today. Now I'm going to speed back into history a little bit. I'm going to turn this over to Lieutenant Colonel Don Humpert, who's going to talk to you about change, the recognition of the need for change, and then Colonel Steve Foreman will tell you what he saw when he arrived. Strap into your seats, ladies and gentlemen, because this is an awesome, awesome story.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that was me. You may not recognize me with, I have a little bit less hair than I did then, but my youngest daughter keeps teasing me every time I go on camera, I lose more hair. Oh well, I'll live with it. Okay, so who the heck am I? And why am I talking here? I was an action officer. An action officer is a guy that gets picked to make sure that things get done, okay? I was at the headquarters level. Major General Lott, you saw him on the video there. I taught him everything he knew about TOC. Well, maybe not everything, but I did have to give him a brief every month, okay? And I was in a great position to watch an implementation all the way from the highest level down to the artisan level, working in the maintenance center, figuring things out. Okay, that's what I'm going to talk about. The last two bullets, I'm going to reverse the order, no problem. All right, I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate to show up in an organization that had evolved and refined over 50 years into the ultimate government organization. Okay? It was an ideal laboratory for dysfunction. And coming there as an operations analyst, it's like, oh wow, what a bunch of great low-hanging fruit. As an OR analyst, they said, okay, well, we've got this other project we're looking at taking on, and you can be the snake oil detector, okay? And so that was kind of how I got my foot in the door. It's like, holy smokes, this stuff makes sense, it works. I think we'll just do this instead. Saved me a lot of problems. Okay, so this is the enterprise level. Beyond maintenance, Logistics Command is responsible for supply chain management for the Marine Corps, in stores, storage, pre-positioning. So it was a lot of activity in this enterprise. What about in the maintenance center? I can see, shock and surprise here, cost overrun, schedule slippage, yada, 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 yada. Okay, I'm preaching to the choir here, no surprises. And that's kind of how business had been done. So what was the impetus for change? BRAC. And that stands for Base Realignment Enclosure Commission. Okay, let me just distill down the essential components from that. Base, closure, okay? We got the word, okay, the next round of BRAC is coming around, and DOD is looking for, to get rid of all that excess capacity. So they may close a depot or two. And now it's not just dissatisfied customers. It's gosh, our very livelihoods, okay? So what are we going to do about this? Well, okay, in TOC you got the three fundamental questions, right? What to change to, how to cause the change. Well, we hadn't been exposed to TOC at that time yet, so we had our own questions. The first one was, what the heck are you guys doing down there? My gosh, this is not working, it's unsatisfactory. And then a statement of affirmation. For God's sakes, do something. Okay, great. What are we going to do? Okay, activate the business process improvement plan. What's that? Okay, let's see. Check the suggestion box here. Damn it. Okay. You got to roll the plan B. It's like, okay, well, let's see. What's he doing over there? Yeah, I don't know if you can relate to this. The first time that you go to like a really fancy dinner, and there's like 4 different kinds of forks and 3 different kinds of spoons and knives at the top of the table and stuff like that, and you're trying to figure out what the heck you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to eat. You just kind of sit there and you look at the next guy over there and go, okay. And a napkin, yeah, got that. So let's see what they're doing. So, I mean, the best of intentions. So we did a survey. We figured out we're going to do best practices. Now, okay, the Marine Corps is world-renowned as a developer of expeditionary warfare, okay? I mean, we developed amphibious warfare. First ones use helicopter in warfare. The V-22, it really rocks, I gotta tell you. But when it comes to business process improvement, okay, not so much. So, take a look around. Well, let's just try them all. Gosh. Why are we going to wait? Let's just do it now. And I'm not kidding, okay? This isn't a sample of, some things that I just went on the internet and I just kind of pulled out. Okay, these are actually the 9 business improvement initiatives, okay, that we decided to implement, all in the same year. Yeah, I mean, I can tell that you're laughing because, why would you need to do TOC after, I mean. Yeah, believe it or not, it didn't fix anything. Yeah, somehow, going down and say, I'm from headquarters, I'm here to help. It just, it was rough. Okay, now this all happened before I got there. Okay, so. Well, then what? Well, somebody learned a little bit about TOC. And the more we got to talking, the more the ideas percolated up top leadership and realized, oh, geez, wish we would have known this, a year ago. So, what was our strategy? Well, first of all, we clarified what to change. Now, the ultimate government organization, talk about stovepipes, talk about measurements, and talk about efficiencies. Oh my goodness. Okay, but we realized, especially with the maintenance center, it's got to be about scheduling. It's got to be about production. Okay, and what do we change to? Well, we figured out what the goal is. It's readiness. Readiness is what we produce. That's what we produced. Readiness per dollar per time. Okay? But readiness, that was the goal. How are we going to do that? Well, we've heard the discussion. Are you about project management or are you about production management? What are you? We had the same kind of brainstorming, trying to figure that out, and then use a little bit of logic and figure, we got both. Every primary end item that comes into the maintenance center is really a project. But then all those parts that get taken off, get sent back to the back shops, that's production. So we figured out how to combine them. And I wish somebody had a book on it at the time, but it was a good experience in itself. So each PEI became a critical chain project, and all the back shops were on drum buffer rope. How do we do it? We picked a pilot, the MK48 that you saw in the film. We decided, okay, we're going to pick this major end item. Every back shop that touches it, we're going to do drum buffer rope in. Then we're going to do another end item, and then more back shops until we get them all. We didn't want to just bring a contractor in to train. We wanted to bring in somebody to train and then teach us how to train so that we had our own ability to maintain the success, train our own people. And it was a culture change. I got to tell you, that didn't help. Okay? Okay, TOC was number 10. Okay, and talk about resistance to change. Yeah, we don't have rednecks Yeah, I'll put my rednecks up against your rednecks any day. Okay, but the steps to buy-in, and the bottom line is the proof and the performance. Okay, that's what got people on board. So, from the headquarters level, what did the headquarters contribute? Well, asking the right questions. Okay, asking for the right measures. Okay, up until we started this, the maintenance center never missed an induction. Up until we started this, and even throughout, I got to say, it's still a challenge within DoD. What's the prime measure of performance? Direct labor hours? I can make labor hours without producing any more trucks. I just work on Sunday. Okay, so asking the right questions. And then providing resources. I mean, it wasn't just, yeah, go ahead and give it a shot, try it, see what happens. It was true understanding in key positions in top management, truly understanding what the impact of this meant, and then providing funding and staff support, me, okay, and some others, okay, but saying, you know what, we're going to really track this. We're going to track this full time. I want monthly briefs. I want to know how we're doing. I want to get the word out. I want to participate in conferences, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, okay. Truly understanding what it's about. Now, you can go into this thinking that this is a process improvement initiative. I call it leadership. Okay, it's leadership is that's what it's about. Leadership from the top, but more importantly, right down where the rubber met the road in the maintenance center. With that, I'm going to introduce you to the leader that made it happen then. Steve?
Let me, is this thing on? Okay. Everybody can hear? The easiest job I've ever had in my life. Seriously, it really was. Mr. Goret, you got some great tools out there with theory constraints. I totally embraced them. I went through the training prior to going down to the maintenance center. What they didn't tell you was that I was assigned to the headquarters staff as a director of ops and as a chief of staff for a while. So when I moved down to the maintenance center, I had a little bit of say-so about what the top management said about the maintenance center. Also on a note, Mr. Walsh, Danny Walsh, mentioned that Albany got the Mason Award, I think in 2005, 2007. For those of you that don't know it, FRC East, I'm currently employed by FRC East. Our H1 program got it for 2008. And received the trophy last year. And a lot of it was because of things that we brought from Vector Strategies, helping us with the implementation of theory constraints, and a lot of things that I learned down in Albany, Georgia. But prior to moving down to the maintenance center, like I said, I was at the headquarters section. I didn't really know anything about theory constraints, but I went through the Jonah training, and also had read the book, The Goal, had saw the movie, The Goal, and something just clicked. I mean, it really did. You know, the purpose of any business is to make money, and say what you want about these depots out there. When somebody out there tells you that the purpose of those depots is not to make money, it's like they don't really understand the concept of what it's all about out there, because it's a business just like in private industry. You know, we might not want to make a whole lot of money, but we at least have to break even. And that's what I set out to do in Albany, Georgia. I can't believe my name is being mentioned with transformational leadership. Like I said, it was probably, I spent 33 years in the Marine Corps, my last 3 in Albany, Georgia. And my time in Albany, Georgia, I feel like was the easiest job I've ever had. And the reason I say it's the easiest job I've ever had, because I was used to doing things, and everywhere I go, I try to empower the people. And if you empower the people to use the tools like you have in place, it makes your job so easy. And that's why I said, like Colonel Gillen said, that it's not work. It's an actual pleasure to come to work or to go to where you're going to hang out for at least 8 to 10 hours. And when you can get 735 and now 17 or 1,800 people feeling exactly like that, you can make some great things happen. I started off with 735 people when I took over the depot. One of the first things I did was test some folks that were there in the senior leadership. I didn't have any previous dealings with the depot whatsoever. When I was told that the depot was on the base, I had to ask somebody where it was, and they said it's about a half a mile over that way down in the woods. And Don's probably heard me tell this story, but by riding by the place and taking a look at it, it looked like the Defense Reutilization and Recycling Center, didn't it? And it's like, I can't believe I'm going to go down there and work, and that's the maintenance center. So I spent 4 days prior to taking over. I called them up and said, hey, I'm coming down. I don't want any briefs. I don't want anything. I just want to be there. And what I did, I got out there in the workforce and started just walking around, meeting the people, asking questions. And I came up with a whole list of things that I thought were problems or concerns that I had, because I'd never really been put in a position like that to where so much responsibility and so much to do to make things right, and I wasn't sure how to go about making the change that needed to be made. I just knew that it had to be a change. Well, one of the first things I did, I had a person who had been there as senior management, and I tested this person. I tried to pick his brain, is what I tried to do. So I tested him a couple times, and the person had been there something like 22 years, had been in the senior position of authority for 8 years. And I started asking him questions, and he started telling me about the organization, and I took him for a walk around the craneway or the hangar and out on the flight line. It's really, what do you guys call it, a ramp or something like that? Okay, I call it a flight line because I'm from an aviation community. And I found out this guy didn't know any more about Maintenance Center Albany and what was going on out there in the workforce than I did. So I called the general up and says, hey, General, I says, I'm moving this guy. And I called the previous boss, who was up being his chief of staff, says, hey, I'm moving this guy. And they said, hey, Steve, man, something wrong with you. You don't know anything about a depot. And I said, well, look, I might not know anything about a depot, but I'll take my chances because this guy don't know as much as I do. So I moved him and just called the general up and moved him, and no firing, nothing like that, because you can't do that in civil service in the government. But it sent a big rumblings throughout the workforce there. It really sent a shockwave through. And I already knew that I needed somebody that, because I'd only planned on being there for 2 years before I moved on, retired or something like that. So I had to hire somebody that was going to take this place to new levels, and I wasn't sure exactly who that person was going to be. To make a long story short, I picked a guy out of the financial section. His name's Trent Blaylock. He's probably one of the finest gentlemen I've ever met in my life. And I spent almost 2 years making this guy a Marine, although he had never served a day in the armed forces, and he's still there today doing great things. My primary job when I got to take over as the commanding officer was basically empowering the people. Let me see if I can, okay. This was me right here, right there, organization head. I flipped the organization chart totally upside down. Didn't tell anybody I was doing it, really, to myself. I didn't know I was doing it. It's just I know that I'd been in organizations before that if you empower the people and you have the tools in place to fix processes and you open up the communication, truly empower your people to speak up you can make some great things happen. And that's exactly what we did. Convinced the management right off the bat that if the artisans, mechanics, anybody else out there was complaining about anything, that it's our fault. Because our job is to provide those folks the resources, parts, materials, manpower, whatever you need to do your job. And that if they were complaining, it's our job to make sure that they got what they needed. Supervisors, I had a department head that had gone for, I think, a total of 14 months without even talking to at least some of his supervisors out there. They made him go through different layers of chain of command, or whatever you want to call it, secretaries, to get an answer back to him. And so, if any of you ever heard of Dale Carnegie in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, I introduced some of our folks to that and says, hey, from now on we're going to do things a little bit different around here. We're going to subordinate everything down to the folks out there on the shop floor. But anyway, I just flipped the organizational chart upside down. Our customers, first and foremost. But right after our customers came the people. MK48 story, you've already pretty much heard that. The stats on this was we had a Lieutenant Colonel Tom, somebody that had been dissatisfied for several years. You know, we weren't getting the products out on time. I think you'll see a chart in here that says we started off with an average of 167 days. The CNA analysis really showed it was 187 days we were averaging getting those Dragon wagons or MK48s out the door. One of the things we didn't do was, once we did the MK48s, we didn't let inertia set in. We had other product lines out there. We had other dissatisfied customers. So we took this LAV. Almost immediately after I took over, we had this Colonel Tom Lytle. He was a program manager for the LAVs. What's the LAV stand for? Light Armored Vehicle? Light Armored Vehicle. From an aviation guy, I'm used to F4s, A4s, Harriers. I didn't know any of that ground stuff. I just knew it was stuff that needed to be fixed, and I knew how to get people to fix stuff, and I knew the supply system a little bit. Uh-oh. What happened here? Time out on me? Where's Danny? Everybody's got a copy of this brief, right? Anyway, we had this program manager, Colonel Tom Lytle. He was down seeing Major General Paul Lee to basically pull the LAV work out of the depot because of cost overruns, not meeting schedules, quality was not all that good. And to make a long story short there, I asked this guy, we were both colonels together, I said, hey, give me 6 months. And then if we can't turn this program around, you come down and you know, I'll help you pull this stuff out of the depot, and you can take your stuff somewhere else. Anniston, another Army depot, or somewhere else, GE, get your stuff fixed. But to make a long story short there, within a couple months of implementing theory constraints on our LAV line, our turnaround time, repair cycle time had almost cut in half. And oh, by the way, the labor hours we're expending against the products to get them out the door dropped also. And we were putting out a better quality product. One of the things on this MK48 that you'll see on some charts, if we ever get the slides back up, is when we started theory constraints in 2001, for that year we averaged 98 days as compared to 187 days prior. But in that 98 days was 6 months of non-TOC work. And the very next year we averaged 53 days per vehicle. And our workload standard hours dropped from about 1,500 to down around 800 or 900 hours. We had a couple hiccups where we found problems out there on vehicles that the fleet had not identified. The articulation hitch that hooks onto this MK48 on the back, they got a hitch, and the trailer's hooked there. We had a problem with that, and we fixed that, incorporated it in our critical chain. That year also, the new fiscal year, we were supposed to be installing the anti-lock braking system. We already had the kits there, but we were waiting on funding from the PMA to go ahead and implement those. Make a long story short there, I contacted the program manager, says, hey, look, we got these kits here. The fleet needs this brake system put in. We don't need any money from you. Don't want any plus-ups, nothing like that. We just want to go ahead and incorporate this in our critical chain and get that work out the door, and we did that. Continuous communication. Like I said, empowering the workforce, letting those guys know what we want to do. The critical chain, as soon as we did the MK48 and the LAV, we moved on, we came up with a plan, and we implemented, I think it was like an additional 22 lines. Every line that we implemented on theory constraints, we got at least a 50% reduction in cycle time, and the hours came down, the quality went up, and oh, by the way, we started making money. This place had been in service for more than 50 years at the time, had never made a dime. The previous fiscal year, I think at the end of the fiscal year, they asked the program managers for an additional $20 million to bring them out of the red. The entire time I was there, and I don't think they've done it today, we have not asked for a single plus-up, not a one. We closed out that first fiscal year in the black. The next fiscal year, we had a budget of about $105 million. We actually had, I think we made something like $27 million bucks. And I talked to the headquarters folks, and like I said, I was previously up there. I started telling these folks before the fiscal year closed out, when they said, well, how much money are you going to need at the end of the year? I said, hey, your biggest problem because of what we've done down there with theory constraints and subsequently some lean principles, 5S, 6S, is that you're going to find that you got excess money and you're going to have to find something to do with it, and it was to the tune of about $27 million bucks. So what we did do, we went out and got some extra work. But let me back up here real quick. Critical chain project management. You know, the way we did that is just textbook. Exactly like Mr. Goldratt, Danny, everybody taught us to do. You bring the artisans, the production divisions down. You go through all the processes. You know, you ask them how long it takes. You cut the safety time in half. You add your buffer to the end. We got so good at developing critical chains that we had our marketing section up at the headquarters go out and bring in additional work. And we gave them down to, you know, a plus or minus of a week of exactly when we could get their products out to the door, and we lived up to that. Drum buffer rope effort, about 9 months into the theory constraints, critical chain project management, we knew that somehow we had to control the work that went to the back shops. These guys were used to batching everything, no level loading. They'd get to the end of the quarter and they'd want to induct everything because they had funding documents. But using drum buffer rope, we came up with a plan to restrict the workload to the workforce. And you talking about sending a shockwave to some of those supervisors and artisans out there when you go from letting them have 30, 60, 90 days worth of work sitting in their shop to, oh, by the way, here's 1 day's worth of work, and you have to complete that today. Because if you don't complete it today, you know, something's going to happen to you. But we're only going to give you enough to make sure that it lines up with the schedule and to meet the schedule to get our products out the door. Throughput focus, I can't say anything more about throughput than if you concentrate on throughput in any business, truly throughput, and you meet the cost, schedule, and quality that you negotiate with your customers, you're going to have a great organization and you're going to make money. And we proved exactly that. Don Humpert mentioned readiness to me. Back then, I didn't even talk about readiness. I just talked about throughput after, you know, reading the book and studying and watching a movie. It's like there is nothing more important to this organization than getting products out the door, throughput. But when I'm talking about throughput, you got to meet the cost, schedule, quality of what your customers need. Financial results. The deputy that I ended up hiring, this guy Trent Blaylock I told you about, he was a previous, comptroller. We couldn't wait till our financials came in, that month, because we knew we were going to make millions of dollars. We just weren't sure how many millions it was. And it just got so that, we would take the information that we had, the TOC reports, lessons learned. We came up almost immediately with a brief that we started telling our program managers that had been disgruntled for a number of years of what we were doing using primarily theory of constraints and the 6S programs, of how we have gotten so good about predicting when your products are going to come out. We actually brought program managers down there, emailing them, calling them up on the phone, hey, come see what's happening. A lot of times before, those guys would have to schedule an appointment three or 4 weeks in advance to just get in there to take a tour of their facility to see how their parts were being fixed. We changed all that. We made it an open door policy. Called them all up and says, hey guys, you want to see what's happening to your products? You come down, no advance notice, nothing like that. You just show up and we'll take you on a tour. And also I said, hey, if you want to come down on the weekends, a Saturday or Sunday, here's my phone number, here's my email, call me and I'll meet you there. Now, not many of them did that in the beginning, but later on some of them came down to see what we did. But we ended up having to go out and sell to bring in our customers back to us. This is the brief that we gave to this the MK48 guy, the 38-page brief of excuses of why we weren't meeting his cost, schedule, and quality metrics the previous year in 2000. He came back down in 2001. I think we gave him a one-page brief with some of the high-level metrics on how many items we had, how many vehicles we'd gotten out the door. Yeah, here's the 98 I talked about. That included 6 months of non-TOC time. When we went to theory constraints, the first full year right there, you can see 53 days for that MK48. Over here is where I was talking about these outliers right here, is where we added in the articulation hitch and the ABS brake system and basically did all that for free. And once we got that fixed, it evened out too. You can see the days there. Costs came down, one of the lowest labor rates in all of DOD. The LAV, I think I've already told you about that with Colonel Tom Lytle. Our turnaround time was just atrocious. I mean, this is 2001, and we started some of those vehicles in that year, but the majority of those vehicles that were completed were not TOC vehicles. And you can see what happened once we did the TOC implementation. The 6 months that I asked this guy to give me, reduced cycle time, 231 days down to 116 days. You saw the guy, Darren Jones, the gray-haired guy, talks with that southern drawl. He says, turn this guy into our best marketer. He's talking about our LAV guy. He came back 6 months later. And the only reason he came down there was to go out and play golf with me and some of the other folks and just tell us he wanted to go out and meet the workforce. You saw the movie The Goal where Bucky Burnside comes out and shakes hands. Well, that's what Tom was doing. So we lived that story. Improved readiness or throughput. The first full fiscal year, we got down to the August-September time frame. And what we had done, we had become so proficient, so productive, that we were about to work ourselves out of work. Had plenty of money left over, but the ramp out there, the back shops, the people were asking me, hey, where's all the work? Where's all the work? It was gone. We were getting it back out to the fleet. And the fleet was happy. But the thing was, I knew we had to do something drastic because, and I realized this up front, and I knew it before because read the book and saw the movie, we had a marketing constraint, and we really did. So I went out to, at the time, Brigadier General Cramlick. He's now a 3-star up at Commandant's Chief of Staff, I think, right? Okay. And I said, hey, sir, we need more work, and here's why we need more work. We're down to about 1 month carryover in this depot. And here we are coming up the end of the fiscal year. I need something to keep my folks busy. We had a sister depot on the West Coast who weren't quite as successful as we were in implementing theory of constraints. To make a long story short, we ended up adding 30 MK48s, the 10 trailers, MK15 trailers. This added 4 LAV25s and 2 proof of principle vehicles. This is where we were waiting on almost $500,000 of funding from the program manager to implement this proof of principle on these LAVs. We said, hey, look, we don't need any money, just send us the vehicles, we want to go ahead and do it, and we did that. MK added 4 MK17 trailers, completed 17 C tractors. And this is where we got so good by doing the critical chain and projecting when our products would get out the door that our marketing office up the street, we took on, I think to start with, 3 vehicles. The first one came out a week early. The second one, they came in for a ceremony to tell us how good we did. And we already had the second vehicle sitting there, and I think we were like a month early. And these guys were so used to waiting on excuses from somebody else that they just couldn't believe it, that they added more workload to our schedule. The Hemmets is something else. We went out and grabbed workload from somebody else. The Humvees the same way. You know, when you talk about ahead of or on schedule for all TOC production lines, after our first 2, the MK48 and the LAV, we immediately came up with a plan and added it, I think it was another 22 lines. Every one of those lines had the same metrics. And then subsequently, I think now we have over 37, 38 lines on theory constraints. Reduced repair cycle times by 50%. Reduced the WIP, quantity of assets in the maintenance center, by 50%. All good metrics. Now, spread the message of success, and this is talking about how you get buy-in from the workforce. I told you I got down there about 4 days prior to taking over the commander, and I came up with some concerns, some problems. Once I validated and verified these, and I did that by going and talking to previous commanders, previous department heads, anybody else that I could talk to, says, hey, these are some of the problems I think that we have down there. You know, cost overruns, you know, the quality was not as good as it should be. Too much overtime. I heard a gentleman talk about overtime. The second or third week I was there, we were working overtime. I think we had 149 people working. We were on the alternate work schedule where they worked Monday through Thursday one week, and then the next week they worked Monday through Friday, but they got off an hour early. But they had used that extra work day on that one Friday to work overtime on a Friday and a Saturday. Well, I came in on a Friday morning, and we had 149 people there working, and they didn't have the right folks there. We'd already told them that, hey, you can't get parts because we're going to shut down and we're going to inventory the warehouse. Didn't bring in the crane guy. Just a multitude of problems. So I checked with the union. Bert can attest to this. A guy by the name of Lamar Fellows at the time. I said, hey, Lamar, these are the problems I'm having with this workforce. We don't have a plan for working this overtime. It's just a matter of what I'd already found out was somebody needs a new boat, fishing rod, Christmas is coming up, so we want to work overtime. I says, hey, when we come up with a plan to work overtime, we're going to work overtime. So I checked with the union and says, hey, what have I got to pay these folks up to go ahead and send them home? And to make a long story short there, I sent them home at 10:30 that day. And I mulled this over the whole weekend. Did I make the right decision? And it's like, I can't believe, here it is, I think it was September or October, and we had the holidays coming up. And I was sitting there thinking, man, I got family, and these guys got kids and stuff like that. And I thought, maybe I made the wrong decision. I thought all weekend that I did, but once I did that, there were more phone calls going out of that depot about what had happened, because they didn't think that anybody would ever come in there and do that. But I saw it as if the purpose of any business is to make money, then you have to do smart things to make sure that you make money. And working overtime for the sake of working overtime is not one of them. And thinking that I made 149 people angry or whatever, I come in Monday morning And it's like, it was a relief to the workforce to find out from the other 550 some that I actually did that. And from that point on, if we wanted to work overtime, we came up with a plan of exactly what we're going to work, why we're going to work it. We're going to have the right resources there. And to this day, I think it's the same thing, right? Okay. But anyway, that's sent a shockwave through, and it's another way that I got a little bit of buy-in to change. Union representative, everybody out there knows why unions are formed, right? Because management is messing over their people. I think it was a Thursday, the week I got there, I got the union president, chief steward, I think, you might have been the sergeant in arms back then, 15 or 20 of them in a room. And I didn't have anybody else, none of my department heads, my deputy or anybody like that. I just wanted to have a meeting with them. And I called them in, set them down, and I said, hey guys, Colonel Steve Foreman here, just want to let you know, putting you out of business. You know what I said, Bert? And they said, what are you talking about? I had a couple of the people there, the chief steward, senior steward, right, that Jimmy Hoffa had nothing over on these folks because all they wanted to do is fight. But I already had an in with the president. This guy by the name of Larry Dowd, he died a couple years ago of lung cancer. But anyway, me and this guy sat down and we discussed things. And I says, hey, Larry, I can promise you from this day forward, we're not going to mess over our people. Matter of fact, it's just the opposite. I came and let the union folks attend the meetings. We went out, myself and Larry, we went out to the base who had the third-party grievances. We brought 3 of them back. I think that's what we're out there, that had been lingering for years. We solved those. And for the next 18 months, 0 grievances. If there was a grievance that was filed, it's because we told them to file a grievance just so we would have paperwork with the labor relations, and we pretty much knew what the outcome was going to be of stuff like that. But anyway, we partnered with the union to make the organization work, and it's continued on today. That's one of the reasons that Burt Black is here to attest to that, being the great American that he is. Where it talks about incorporated TOC methodology, everybody talks about policy constraints and stuff like that. When you're the commander of a depot and somebody says, well, our policies won't let us do this, well, guess what? As a commander, you can sign off and you can fix policies, and we did a lot of that stuff back then. But that took care of the policy constraints. I'll tell you a little bit about our lean implementation. They wanted to give me $1.5 million to start incorporating lean thinking. I went with Major General Lee and somebody else up to Lockheed Martin and saw what they had done with lean thinking. Then we went over to Warner Robins and saw what they were doing at the Air Force facility there. And this lean thinking, to me, this 5S, 6S, whichever one you want to use, was a big cleanup in an organization. And I talked to some of the artisans out there, you know, aside from the contractors who were trying to get on our payroll to get this $1.5 million, which I turned down, to come in and help us implement lean thinking. When I turned that money down, they thought I was crazy. But what I saw, the places I went, was that, yeah, they had implemented lean thinking, 5S, 6S, but as soon as the contractors walked away, guess what, folks? It went back to the way it was. So here's what we did. I worked my way into the depot up there through the military and told them exactly what I wanted to do. And here's what I ended up doing. I took 2 van loads of folks every other week. We left Albany, Georgia at 7:30. It was about an hour and a half ride up there. I would get the contractors, the military, to show us what they've done with lean thinking, 5S, 6S. I told them what I was doing. I said, we're taking notes. We're going to steal with our eyes. And we're going to go back to Albany and we're going to incorporate ourselves. These contractors were thinking all along, this guy's crazy. We're going to end up down there on the payroll. But we did the implementation of 5S, 6S, or lean thinking, exactly like we did the theory constraints. We did a pilot, then we did another pilot. We saw that it was going to work,
we did the same thing there. We did a shop, the auto body shop, and we went over to the cable shop, got all the supervisors together, took them out there, showed them how easy this stuff works, how well lean thinking, 5S, 6S, reducing waste, works with theory constraints. And so we did our own implementation with no money whatsoever from outside sources. And I don't know whether you're getting any money to do 5S, but I'm hearing things are still looking good down there. A couple of the other principles, one-piece flow. You produce one, you induct one. You stop the batching. You know, you stop all of the bad behaviors. It's not rocket science. Create a pull system, single-piece flow, pull system. The critical chain, we got so good at that, it was almost scary. And our artisans, you know, the ones you're talking about getting buy-in from, they had the most input to that. And so they would tell us, they wouldn't inflate their times. You know, throw in the safety time that everybody wants to throw in to before they do the critical chain because they're afraid that they're not going to meet whatever it is you set for them, the goal you set for them. Simplified drum buffer rope. I talked a little bit ago about restricting the workload to the back shops and make sure that they married up to the critical chain project need date or whenever we need those parts back. Darren Jones, the guy you saw, the gray-haired guy, he came up with a plan. And what we did here to sell change was, we knew that it wouldn't impact everybody. But again, we knew that if we wanted to sell change in that depot, we had to let everybody know what we were doing. So we did that change just like we did everything else. We brought people in about 30 to 40 at a time, set them down, told them what we were going to do, restricting the workload to the workforce, you know, setting up the daily queues, weekly, long-term, extra long-term, things like that. And once we went through that workforce, then we put it in place. And it really works. I had guys out there, one of the guys I'll tell you about him, Big Freddie Wilkerson. I mean, this guy was this big around, he had to have 2 stools to sit on. He fixed hydraulic pumps. He'd been fixing hydraulic pumps for years. So when I took his workload away from him, this guy, I think I broke his heart. He was fixing hydraulic pumps that I was going to need 18 months down the road. And so I had to convince him, hey Freddie, man, you got to learn to fix something else. And he did. But sometimes you have kickbacks. Luckily, we didn't. Every organization you go into, if you're not meeting the schedules, it's supplier's fault, right? I'm in an organization right now that if you go in and you ask 90% of the people what's wrong, it's a parts problem, right? Why don't we just take all the parts people out there and shoot them? And here's what I sold the folks on. Yeah, it might be a parts problem, but anywhere, you know, you're talking about parts, whether it's planning, whether it's forecasting, whether it's putting a piece of gear on a piece of equipment, there is a single person that is probably keeping you from getting what you need. And if you don't take no for an answer and you find who that person is and you plan properly and you forecast properly, guess what? You're going to get your parts. And we tested that. Shortly after I got there, I says, hey guys, you say it's a parts problem. When I was giving my briefs to everybody says, sir, you can fix everything right now, but you can't fix the parts problem. I says, well, give me your top 10 things that you can't get parts for. And would you know when they gave me that list, within 24 hours, we had every one of those parts that they needed? How can you do that when they've been waiting months for parts? As long as you got money and you got vendors out there, guess what? You can get parts. Anybody disagree with that? Because people want to make money. And so the thinking changed. I mean, it changed to where they would not take no for an answer. We'd call somebody up and somebody would say, man, I can't get it for you. I said, well, I'm going to find somebody that can. And that's the attitude that we took and started changing everything from it's a parts problem to it's a people problem, and then we can solve people problems, and we did. Any questions on supply? Make versus buy decisions. Another common sense thing. We were fixing fuel injectors on the 1760 engines and taking about 2.5 hours to do it. We found a vendor that would give them to us for $25 a piece. We were paying somebody about $300 or $400 to fix these things. And so, when I took that repair away from the folks, and you explain it to them like it's a common sense thing, the guys that were fixing fuel injectors it was okay to fix something else. But you have to let them know up front why you're doing it. Because if you don't, you're not going to get buy-in. Okay, time. Okay, time. We got to go to lunch. Now, this is where I was talking about the drum buffer rope effort, setting up the daily queues where we went to the daily releases for the parts just to make sure everything marries up. Is that fast enough? Any questions on that slide? Again, theory constraints, throughput up. I can't talk enough about the high-level metrics. You want throughput up, you want your operating expenses down, you want your inventory down, because we all know inventory costs money, and you want your quality to be a good quality product. If not, you're going to be out of business. But all of these metrics, whether it's customer satisfaction, direct labor hours, repair cycle time, WIP total repair costs, were all in the right direction. Oops. Variation, this is just quick. In 2001, 192 days variation in the MK48, and you can see what they've worked it down to. 38 days as of FY07, and these are the different percentages. Sounds like Six Sigma stuff, doesn't it? Anybody not know what the 5 focusing steps of TOC are? We actually used them, folks, and they work. Again, metrics that if you concentrate on throughput and you convince your workforce that they're empowered and they're allowed to communicate, you can make some great things happen using theory constraints. We had meetings, financial meetings, one right after another, about 3 days a week, trying to decide how we're going to get the money to fund the rest of these lines. We stopped that almost immediately. All our meetings became production-oriented. What can we do to increase throughput? Where do we need help from? Where do we need parts from? So all of our meetings became, instead of financially driven, we're production-driven. And again, the reports, the scheduling, using critical chain, project management, drum buffer rope, they all work. I can't say enough about communication and some of the bad behaviors like batching. The buffers, whether it's a physical buffer or a time buffer, you need to incorporate those in there. I'm sure you folks know as much as I do about that. Challenge, when to say no, you don't say no. If you get no, you go somewhere else. Training and education. The workforce, like I was telling you about our drum buffer rope effort, we included everybody. And we did the same thing for 5S and theory constraints training. Any questions real quick? Let me turn it over to Dan Gillen. Thanks. Need this?
I'm good. Okay, everybody. It's all about passion. And I think you saw that in Steve Foreman's presentation. Passion about doing the right thing, making the right choices. Keeping it simple is really what it was all about then. So now here we are today. How have we managed to sustain it? How have we managed to keep this going? And how are we going to manage to keep it going into the future? That's what's critical. It's great if you get a good idea implemented, but if it leaves when that person leaves, it's just another bright idea. Gone to history. So what we've done is we continue a very disciplined process of reviewing our organization to make sure our organizational construct is relevant to our production effort, our operational effort. We've continued a very aggressive, dynamic approach at team building, conducting off-sites, professional development of our workforce, strategic planning. There should be no white space in our future calendar in terms of getting our managers, getting our supervisors, working hand in hand with our union, continuing to pursue and evolve that relationship with our union personnel to make sure that we can push this into the future. That growth in personnel I talked to earlier, that growth in personnel comes with the requirement to continue the training, to continue not just the training, you know, the difference between education and training, to continue the education of understanding the underlying foundations of production, of the theory of constraints, subordinating everything to that critical production chain. We haven't been able to do this on our own, and we recognize that. We have a host of relationships established with industry, with other Department of Defense depots. We produced an improvised explosive device mine roller. This contraption that goes out in front of a truck, out on the roads of Iraq, and will detonate those roadside bombs so that those bombs do not detonate underneath the vehicle. We partnered with Joe Gibbs Racing, NASCAR, to come up with a way to fabricate axle assemblies that would separate from that roller and still allow those Marines and that convoy and that patrol to push through that ambush, to push through that kill zone and do what Marines are trained to do, which is return fire, check for their wounded, call for air, and continue with their operational mission. We've partnered with Delta Airlines. We've got, in fact, this is a good illustration of how things come full circle. Back shortly after we had implemented the theory of constraints, as the story that was relayed earlier, Gary explained to us the need to bring in theory of constraints. And they actually talked with us. And they've actually referenced us, Delta referenced us, that is, in the article, Turbo TOC, where they talked about that relationship with Maintenance Center Albany and the lessons learned and what they had to do to implement based on the 7 principles that you see noted there. So what are we doing today? Today, I will tell you that we are partnered with Delta Airlines. Delta is our mentor for the Voluntary Protection Program, where we're pursuing certification in the Voluntary Protection Program, VPP, that addresses risk management, safety, employee health in the command. They are our mentor, so that relationship continues to this day. When it comes to sustainment, I commented on the importance of our workforce, not just the training and education aspect, upgrading our software as new upgrades become available for us to continue to evolve our theory of constraints approach, our production approach. 2 shining examples noted here. Our Humvee effort a year and a half ago, not quite a year and a half ago, we started producing Humvees. We hadn't done so in over 10 years. It was taking 22 days. 22 Humvees a month, and it was taking over 72 days to do so. This month, this very month, November of 2008, we're producing 85 Humvees a month, and we're doing it in approximately 23 days, depending on whether the vehicle's armored or unarmored. The M113 armored personnel carrier, you'll see an increase in the days of production. The only reason the repair cycle time increased on that vehicle is because the requirements changed on us. Because of input from our employees, from our civilian Marines to that program manager telling them what needed to be done. I suspect probably in about the next 4 to 5 months, we'll see that cycle time start driving down, because it has. It's already started. The most important aspect of sustainment, though, is the people. Our civilian Marines that do it every day. And if when we break for lunch, I would encourage you to please engage Bert Black, who represents our civilian Marines, the personnel that make this happen every day. Because it's because of them that we're able to be successful, and we're able to chart a course for success into the future. So please, engage Bert. Our market share has expanded. Boy, what a great thing for a company to say, right? Our market share expands, not just with the traditional Marine Corps effort, but with non-traditional. And we've still got people coming to us, people that we haven't even invited to us, people that we're not marketing or soliciting, They're coming to us asking us to do business, asking us to consider partnerships. Ultimately, it's all about recognizing the fact that what we do every day in that command is so critically important because a Marine's life really, truly depends on what is done in that maintenance center. And these 4 hard chargers right here are living proof. Operative word is living. Living proof of surviving a catastrophic IED detonation under their Humvee. Now that Humvee is not the same Humvee that they were in. That door that those 4 Marines are standing next to is the door off of that Humvee that we brought back to our maintenance center to test and evaluate as we continue to evolve the armor effort. That's really who it's all about. Hoorah. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll conclude our presentation. I know we've run long. I would invite you to please ask us questions. It is so personally exciting to be a part of this command as we chart our future to continue to sustain the excellence that these 3 gentlemen here started, 6+ years ago. And we're charting a future to continue to evolve, as Ellie Goldrat mentioned yesterday. And with that, I'd like to thank Dr. Goldrat for the opportunity, the invitation for us to present our story, not just on the need for change, but on our sustainment effort into the future. And likewise, Danny Walsh, who has worked very closely with us in not only trying to refine a presentation that told a good story, but most importantly, told a very honest story. And I hope you've been able to take away some gems from that presentation. Thank you very much.
I just want to add some things. I've heard about the implementation in your depot quite early, and the speeds that you've done it and so on. And the more I heard about the speed and about the results, I became more and more worried. Terrified. Why was I so afraid? Here there is an organization that is doing, at that time I believe that you surpassed anybody else in terms of speeds of implementing it. The only problem is they belong to an organization that is under the mentality of cutting. And that was the mentality at the time. Would you concur? Absolutely. And they have 0 salespeople. I was so terrified because what I have seen in front of my eyes is how the mandates come from the top and telling you to lay off another 200 people. That's why, directly a little bit, but mainly through Danny, I was begging, produce marketing material. Begging. And I said, the best marketing material is simply describe what you've done, nothing more. Be very honest of where you were, and be very honest and show what you've done. That's all. That's the best marketing material. But provide it in such a way that it can go around. Do you understand how happy I am now that not only that nobody was punished for doing the right things, which is usually the case, you have grown beautifully. But you've proven something else, something that nobody have believed in, definitely not me. Have you noticed who is their clients? It's not anymore the Marines. And yes, that's the first amount of work that they got is they stole it from their depot sister inside the Marine. Am I right? Yep. But that's limited. Definitely not enough to support the fantastic improvements that they've done. Fellas, I can understand they are getting more work from private sector. I can understand even to get work from the Air Force. But they've done the real impossible. They have got work from the Navy. There is nothing more that can show how good you are. Thank you very, very much.